Well, we're here live at Spec Summit 2024 in Austin, Texas. We're excited as we start to wrap this up. We're going to be talking a little bit about the look ahead in packaging, and I'm brought some great packaging professionals with me. I'd like to introduce them. Adam Peak, most of them know from the people on the podcast, Packaging, it's a great podcast, and Matt Daum from MSU, and Kitty Dalgert from Taylor Farms. So we've had a great couple days here chatting together and really listening to people talk about what's in front of them, what's going to happen in the near future. And three main topics I'd like to talk about is really sustainability. I think it was probably the number one used word here this week. The next one is really the next generation, empowering them, which is really timely with Matt here. And then ultimately making jokes about AI, but what's AI's effect going to be in packaging as we move forward? So what are your thoughts on Summit, Adam?
This is my third Summit, so appreciate everybody. Again, massive shout out to the SpecRite team. I go to a lot of events, and this is hands down my favorite. And I'm not like the performance artist who is like, I love you, Cleveland, and then it's like, I love you, Detroit, you're the best. It genuinely is just like one of the absolute best, because you get like there's a heavy amount of talent density here. Just people who are, I think you guys reference like change makers, just people who come. It's a very condensed schedule, and you said it yesterday. You give someone an hour to talk, they'll talk for an hour. You give them 20 minutes, they'll probably say the same thing just in 20 minutes. And so it's fast-paced. It's very informative. But the best thing is just the networking and the people you get to meet accidentally, like on the elevator or just kind of milling around. So if you haven't been to Spec Summit, what are you doing with your life?
What are your insights, Matt? I know we had a great opportunity to share some of your vision and what's going on at MSU and your thoughts on Summit.
Yeah, I think of it in a historical perspective, and we're in this little window of time where you have a lot of digitization going on. And so fundamentally, companies are learning how to do things differently, more efficiently. And when you're in that space and when you're in that moment of time, it's not easy because it's a lot of change management. And so what has struck me the last couple of days are the number of times I've heard leaders come together and say, you know what, I feel better about this because I see others are going through the same thing. We're experiencing similar growth pains, but we're very happy to be on this path. And so that knowledge sharing and the willingness to share is really refreshing. And I think that's one of the marks of the packaging community.
Yeah, definitely. And Kitty, love your thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with Matt that we're in this moment in time, not only because we're in this period of digitization, but also companies are being compelled by regulations and by consumers. We really need to get our stuff in order to be successful, and those that do are going to be ahead of the curve. And Spec Summit, this has been my first trip here to the summit, and I've been so impressed with the level of talent and the focus. These are functional discussions and real reality checks on the difficulties of making this journey, but also the potential for where we can go forward. And it's exciting and compelling, and I can't wait to get back and keep going forward.
Yeah, I love it. The moment in time. I've noticed this summit, obviously, I've been to them all, is this one's really up-leveled the conversation. I think the two biggest words used, obviously, was sustainability and data, and really the need for all of us to do this. And it's interesting to see the dynamic conversations. It's really not SpecRite talking to people. It's everybody talking to each other. As Adam mentioned, we're kind of all in this together at this moment in time. And I agree with you. This is the moment in time. I think that's part of the up-level, and we really feel this intensity around us. So it's exciting. And as I mentioned, one of the big words, the summit's sustainability. I mentioned on the stage the other day, I think it's the most dynamic word and hardest to explain that there is out there today. But we did a consumer project where we surveyed a lot of consumers. We do a lot of industry surveys, but it was interesting to see we're also consumers. It's interesting to also reach out and just look for the general trends. And I don't think they're that shocking, but by and large, the far majority of consumers don't trust what they're being told. Consumers are saying that they would make purchasing decisions based upon it if they felt comfortable with that decision-making process. And ultimately, in the 80% range, people would make decisions if they had real hard data in front of them. And again, I said the second most used word at this event's been data, so they go together. And I won't go off on my talk track of how sustainability can't happen without data, but they are intertwined. And I know you shared the other day, Kitty, some great stuff Taylor Farms doing in the regards to sustainability, really putting yourself behind what you guys are saying. I'd love for you to share some of that.
Sure, absolutely. So Taylor Farms is vertically integrated from being at the farming level to logistics to the production floor to the consumer products that the consumers eventually see. And there's opportunities for sustainability at every level. And at Taylor Farms, we want to focus on what we can do now and have the biggest impact. So a lot of our sustainability goes around our power use and water reduction. Several of our plants are zero waste certified already, and our flagship organic plant is actually 100% off the grid already. And these are powerful impacts. We're certainly focused on packaging. But that means a lot of different things. We still need to deliver fresh produce to the consumer, and we need the packaging to do that. So we get our wins where we can, and in the case of packaging, it's about reducing packaging, only delivering what we have to provide the product to the consumer.
Yeah, and you think about Taylor Farm, what a respected brand. We joked about yesterday, everybody has it in the fridge. And, so it only makes sense that you kind of do the work you're doing to be even a better steward, because the consumers really do view you as a great product and a great company. So it all makes a lot of sense together. And I know we also talked about academia. SpecRight's taught in 14 universities, but we have a really close relationship with MSU. And I think a comment I think you made, Matt, yesterday, which I really appreciate, is you're all in it together. It's academic programs are all focused on sustainability and teaching it. And so any thoughts on kind of how we move forward on that?
Yeah, sustainability can be defined a lot of different ways depending on who you ask. And I think from an academic point of view, I also see sustainability being a very emotional topic. So, people have different worldviews and ideas about stewardship of the earth and what does that mean, and how do you, if you're in industry, how do you still create value and create profits, and yet at the same time have this stewardship mentality? And that's a hard thing to crack. And a lot of young people are very influenced by social media and what they see on social media, and so there's a certain perspective sometimes that comes through on that. And the sentiment of wanting to change is great, but the question is, how do you know if what you change to actually is better in the long run for our resources and for our earth? And so I think that's where academic institutions have a critical role to play, which is to teach students how to think holistically, end to end, across the whole value chain, look at all the trade-offs, and do it from a data-driven perspective. But to do it from a data-driven perspective, you need to have the data in the first place, and you have to have tools like SpecRight in order to do that kind of analysis. And so we spend a lot of time with students trying to instill that kind of framework and that kind of mentality. Not that there's good material, good way to do it, bad way to do it, but you've got to look at the different trade-offs, and you've got to look at the data behind what you're doing so that when you do make a change, you can confidently say this is the right thing to do in the long run.
Talking about social media, not only, Adam, are you a social star on your podcast, but you're also in the packaging space. And so, you're obviously hearing from customers. And, what's the biggest request you're getting these days?
It's been interesting because, I do kind of live in both worlds a little bit in terms of, I have an online presence, which is candidly annoying at times because you just get the rawness of humanity because people can hide behind their computers. And so you're right, there's a lot of education that has to happen. I was talking with Kitty yesterday about food waste, as an example, is the third largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions globally. And so you have these competing things where it's like people are like, plastics are bad and global warming is bad. And it's like, well, we're barreling towards a population of 10 billion people on the planet. How do we expect to feed them sustainably without this material? I wish I could say there was a better material. There's not a better material right now. So, it's just educating people around that. I think that what consumers and brands are now looking for, and a lot of it is, and legislation has been a big part of this conversation, is being driven by legislation, is transparency in sustainability. So it's not just sustainability. I've told this story, probably a dozen times on my podcast, but one time I had a coffee bag, and it said, this bag is 50% compostable. which means it's 0% compostable, right? Like it was a paper poly, bag, and you can't compost it. And people are obviously they're sick of that, and they do want to get down to the data. And so I think that's why you see the Spec Summit growing. It's not because of your good looks. I hate to tell you this, or even because people just love software, but it's because they have a problem that is coming towards them on a daily basis, which is how do we not only show our consumers, but now how do we show the government? How do we avoid paying extra taxes? How do we avoid fines? And you can't get to any of that without the data. It would be like trying to report your own personal taxes without accounting for anything.
No, it's very complex, and I think it's coming a lot faster than many are planning on or expecting to or prepared for. The next topic I'm really near and dear, and I know a couple of people at the table are too, is the next generation workforce coming into packaging, right? And it's not perhaps like some of us did, where it's you kind of learn and stumble around it. People really want to come in and make impact and be part of something valuable immediately. And what I disregard is a lot of my cohorts complain about it, and then they complain about the lack of having workers and then really how hard it is, instead of really leaning into it and understand how do you fix this or how do you make it better. And so obviously I mentioned we're taught in 14 universities. My belief is that you enable technology that people are used to using since they're children and make that technology stream look the same so that when they go into the workforce, not only are they immediately making impact, but it's a world they're used to living in. And I think that's where a lot of the focus should be on the next generation. But Matt, I know that's a topic that's obviously your business, so love to get your thoughts on equipping the next generation with the tools they need.
Yeah, well, and that's been our philosophy of the way we teach, is to prepare students for what they should expect going into industry, and that's been part of the success of our partnership. We want students to think in this value chain perspective, data-driven perspective, and so it's very natural then to work with SpecRite software and teach them and say, look, here is the foundation of how you can make decisions. And not only that, but create extra value. So if you have this platform, then you can do this for your sustainability reporting, and you can do this to speed up your product lifecycle development and so forth. So we want to teach students those possibilities and the tools that make that possible. So when they go into their first jobs, that's their expectation. Now that creates a little pressure for companies, because you're going to start seeing entering into the workforce students that want to work a certain way, and if you don't have those kinds of tools or not able to work that way, you may be at a disadvantage. Now the other piece of that is that packaging programs across the U.S. have not grown at all in the last 20 years, but the demand for packaging engineers has greatly increased. So we regularly see this big mismatch in supply and demand. Each year, I would say around 500 total students graduate from some kind of packaging program in the U.S. But if you go look on LinkedIn or some of these other job sites, you'll see 3 to 10 times that number of jobs that are posted. And so, what I've been trying to think through at Michigan State is how can we help meet that demand over time? We can't do it alone. But there is that mismatch, but then there's also the intention of how we're trying to train students to be ready when they go into industry.
Yeah, no, I was going to say 10x, so it's a big gap. And what you're doing at MSU and expanding and doing all the great things you did with the new packaging school recently, and really making that experience great from technology and surroundings, I think really is going to help us close that gap of talent and technology. Kitty, any thoughts before we move on to the next topic?
I think you said it well, Matt.
Good.
Can I jump in? Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Because I think this is a really big topic, and I do try to spend a lot of time talking with especially high school students about this, because most people, and you can probably all sort of relate to this, when I say I work in the packaging industry, they have zero idea what you're talking about. And so just helping to educate them not only about the possibilities of, from design to now there's software opportunities, there's engineering opportunities, there's all sorts of opportunities in this space, I think is really incumbent upon all of us to feel comfortable, being out there. And I know that's not for everybody, but the fact is, TikTok is the #1 search engine right now in the world. It just took over Google. Wow. And I don't honestly create a lot of content on TikTok. Most of us don't. But if you want to go reach people, you have to go where they're at. Right. And I think that it's a big part of your new TikTok strategy. for the Matthew Wright page. Is that?
Yeah, I knew this was going to come. No,
And, yeah,
Not yet.
we're gonna have the dances. You're gonna do the spec right dance, do the data two-step.
No, but I think to your point, I really appreciate you and Corey and even our own Laura Fody for creating these podcasts. It's a new way to capture the new audience that we have to. We have to think differently, and so really appreciate what you all are doing around that. And then last topic's the hottest topic of a lot of the pundits and people that talk about technology, AI, right? And AI is almost as complex as sustainability and definition. But we showed a few things we're doing about it yesterday, and I think it caught some people by surprise, because if you think about the journey from no data or spreadsheets and Lotus Note systems we talked about to where we're kind of headed with technology, to me it's extremely exciting, but obviously daunting to some. So any thoughts on AI? And I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, immediately I just think about the infamous Allen Iverson press conference, and I just, it's like, we're talking about packaging, not software, no, whatever. You guys know that? You remember this rant that Allen Iverson went on?
I can't say that I do.
Oh, man, his coach got mad at him for missing practice, and he came out, he's like, we're talking about practice, not a game. Anyway, every time someone says AI, I think about Allen Iverson. It's here, it's very relevant right now. I think that when the people who built the engines are saying, we better be careful on how that we have to harness this thing so it doesn't get too out of control. I think it's okay for us to have a natural sense of maybe trepidation, but you have to also be educated on it. I think it's coming into packaging design. It's coming into digital media. It's coming into engineering. I know people who are looking for ways to engineer boxes, for example, just with some simple text, and you get a die line. I think it's going to come into automation and manufacturing, and so you can either put your head in the sand and say, no, it's not going to happen here. We still use Lotus Notes. That's the 17th time Lotus Notes has been mentioned at this summit. We still do things the old-fashioned way, and it's like, yeah, but the pace of innovation has accelerated so fast, and you're seeing it now in AI, and so you can duck your head, or you can follow. Like my friend Avelio has a whole packaging AI page, and he shows just what is happening right now with artificial intelligence at the packaging design stage. So it's here, right? Like the robots are here, and they're but so far they're harmless, and they're here to help, and they're here to free up a lot of innovative time, I think, from people, which is good. So those are my thoughts on it. I don't know if you all...
How about Matt?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, I would say that within Michigan State, within 2 semesters, we went from hearing about AI and not really knowing exactly what it was to now every faculty member has an AI policy for their class. So you have to tell students up front what is fair use and what is not in the class in terms of AI tools. And so as you can imagine, it depends on the faculty member, but it can be all over the place. But the point is, they have to have some kind of policy on this because it's so prevalent now. Second thing is, we have now a dedicated class that incorporates AI and machine learning that students can take. We integrate that in with robotics. And so we're trying to find ways to deliberately figure out how do these new tools become part of the way you do work in packaging, whether it's design, whether it's how you run machines on the line, and so forth. So it's not... we're way past if this is going to happen. Now it's figuring out the best way to be productive with these kinds of tools.
Don't you think, too, that spec data is one area where it's going to absolutely accelerate not only the importance of having good data, because AI needs a data foundation to come from, right? But when you have that, I think that you can accelerate a lot of good things.
Yeah, we talked about the caption of data and the challenges of that a lot, right? Because we're all in that, and I think that's going to play a role in doing that and helping us accelerate kind of the visibility of specifications as people want to do that. And Kitty, thoughts?
Yeah, same thing. There are so many opportunities for AI actually in business. In our business, we're already using AI on the production floor with some of our automated machinery, and it's allowing us to provide better work for our workers. It's cold and wet in those coolers where we make all the produce, packaged produce, but specifically for data, I feel like it's an opportunity for us to provide a bridge for those who are not necessarily ready immediately to access all this myriad of data that we're going to have available to them and make it easier for them to use it more intelligently. And that just means that we're going to be leapfrogging with our capabilities with the data available. And I that's so exciting.
Yeah, I look at we're talking about this phase, and as the phases we're moving into, it's exciting times for all of us. It's really different and it's exciting. In wrapping up, we had a great closing speaker last night that was talking about change, right, and the challenge of getting organizations to change. And one of the comments he made, which I think is fitting for AI, is, we're not there yet. We don't know the answers, but the journey is going to be fun. We're going to explore the journey. And part of change is not this and now, it's the journey, and going through that journey. So excited to have you all here as we wrap up Spec Summit 24. We made the big announcement, Spec Summit 25 is back in Nashville. We're starting to kind of create a trend between Austin and Nashville. Until they let us down, we'll keep doing that. So we'll see you guys in Nashville.
Awesome.
Outstanding. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.